Well, we're headed to the United Nations to meet with the Assistant Secretary General to talk about the violence in Chicago, the gun violence in particular, the bloodshed that's taking place in too many of our communities like Austin, West Garfield Park, North Lawndale, places like that, where we've just seen horrific levels of shootings and that sort of thing. And so I'm hoping to appeal to the UN to actually come to Chicago and meet with victims of violence and maybe even possibly help out in terms of peacekeeping efforts, because I think it's so critical for us to make sure that these neighborhoods are safe. Quite frankly, we fail the people of Chicago in many instances in these communities because we failed to protect them from the violence. I'll also say this, that there is a quiet genocide taking place in too many of our communities. 80% of those who are being killed by gun violence are African American, often killed at the hands of another African American. And so we must protect these population groups, and that's what the United Nations does. They're a peacekeeping force. They know all about keeping the peace, and so we're hopeful that they'll hear our appeal. I know that there are those who will disagree and who will say that this is an admission that we can't protect the people in the city, but quite frankly, we haven't protected them.
It revealed that as killings rose, police activity fell. In August of 2015, cops stopped and questioned 49,257 people. A year later, those stops dropped to 8,859, down 80%. At the same time, arrests were off by a third, from just over 10,000 to 6,900.
He spent much of his 20-year career undercover, working the gangs and guns beat.
From an officer's point of view, what were the consequences or effects of the Laquan McDonald incident?
Respect for the police is, very limited in certain areas of the city of Chicago. It's become more and more difficult to police. I know a lot of really talented officers on the Chicago Police Department that aren't doing anything. They're afraid of getting jammed up, meaning sued or fired for doing their job.
You talk to cops every day.
We do.
What's the morale?
Lowest it's ever been.
Brian Warner is a former Chicago cop. He was shot in 2011. He explained what a dozen beat cops told us off camera. They had stepped back.
You have a 911 call, you go to your 911 call. But if you want aggressive patrol, when you're out looking for people breaking the law, that's not happening as much as it was.
It's become a state more of depolicing than policing now, and it's tragic. It used to be a job where it was just a lot of fun to go out there and take guns off the street, get dope off the street, and I feel as if our hands are tied right now. And there's a lot of bullshit paperwork involved now that makes officers want to kind of really not be aggressive and go out there and fight crime. I think it makes them want to just pick up a paycheck and just say, fuck this.
You say they're not being as proactive.
No, they're not. And how could you ask them to be, and why would you expect them to be?
Because it's their job. They signed on to do that.
It's my job to go to work and listen to your 911 calls and respond to my 911. That's the basic ability of my job. So if you want me to do the basics, that's what I'm doing now.
Because you'd be in jail. You better believe it.
Subscribe to Very Fake News.